This is recording. Okay. What's up, fellas? And welcome to today's episode of Serious Podcast. Today we are going to be discussing three main questions. How does race influence the justice system? Do children inherit their parents' ideas and values? And are there consequences to not following society's expectations? To help answer some of these questions, we're going to be looking at the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and we're also going to be asking a couple experts on what they think. So our first guest here today is Jason Bush. He is a professor of ethics at the Nature Center of Stamford, Connecticut. He studied at Assumption College and is here today to discuss societal expectations and the consequences of not following them. How are you, Jason?
I'm great, Brandon.
So my first question is, what are some characters from the book To Kill a Mockingbird that don't follow society's expectations?
Well, from the book To Kill a Mockingbird, there are characters known as Atticus, Scout, and Jem. Like, Atticus, for example, is defending a black man in times where prejudice and racism was still happening in the South.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the risks that people assume when they decide to go against society?
You know, people are definitely risking their social status when they go against society because their reputation will kind of decline within society. People are also risking their honorability when they try to make a change and when they try to do something different.
So do you think the people in To Kill a Mockingbird face consequences when they go against society?
Oh, I think that they definitely face consequences when they don't follow the social norm. In To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus is defending a black man when everyone else is white. He will definitely face consequences for his actions because of the social norm that he's supposed to maintain. But since he's standing up for what he believes in, but most people won't believe in him or his change.
In your opinion, is it in the best interest of these characters to do what they do and go against society?
I don't think that it is in the character's best interest to go against society because it's almost 100% going to end badly for them, and the idea that they're standing up for something will get them shot down immediately.
So are there people in today's society, not talking about the book, more about real life, are there people that go against social norms?
People sometimes have to go against social norms in modern society. For example, members of the LGBTQ community feel like they're outcasts in society. Sometimes they feel universally awkward and always feel pressure from their peers because of their sexual orientation.
Thank you so much for that insightful commentary, Jason.
No, you're welcome, Brandon.
Our next guest, all the way from Macomb, Alabama, is Jean Louise Finch. Jean Louise grew up in a time of political and social turmoil in the South, with her father serving as her main source of enlightenment about the topic. She is here to speak with us today. Welcome to the show, Jean Louise.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you.
So, how did you feel when your father decided to defend a black person?
Honestly, Brandon, at first I was conflicted. Experiencing criticism from others has always been a battle. But at the time I was only 6, so I tended to resort to physical altercations because I was confused and angry. It's hard not to let other people's words seep in and haunt you, but at the end of the day, my father is and has always been my hero, so when he told me that he was doing what he had to do, I believed him. Looking back on it, I can view him as a pioneer in his field and someone who, through his actions, aided in the fight for civil rights.
So, you said that you've experienced bullying. Was this bullying from children and adults, or one or the other?
Well, it was very surprising to me because obviously as a kid you expect the other kids to have these prejudiced and small-minded views about things, mostly due to the fact that they don't know any better. What I never expected to experience was this same closed-mindedness from grown people who did not like my father.
Do you think these kids had developed their own opinions, or do you think they were just repeating what their parents said at home?
I think that especially in a town where the majority of people grew up in families composed of closed-minded individuals, it is easy to understand how they would inherit those views from a young age. This, combined with the fact that most young children look up to their parents, definitely contributed to how I was treated.
How did it feel to see your father in court, a place where there was so much tension and so much at stake?
Well, being so young, it was hard for me to fully grasp what was going on. But even as a 6-year-old, I could sense the attitude of the crowd. And my father was down there in the middle of it all, defending a black person. I just remember wanting him to succeed because at the end of the day, I had given my trust to him that he was doing what was right, despite what everyone in Macomb was saying.
Although we know that Tom was found guilty, do you think your father succeeded in defending him?
Yes, I do. No matter what the outcome of the case, my father persevered through all the judgment of his peers, acquaintances, and friends in order to take this case and help this man. In doing this, he helped break down the barriers that restrict black people from being treated as equals in society. I thought that as a little girl, and I still do today.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, G. Louise.
No problem.
Okay. Our final guest here today is Ryan Kenny. Mr. Kenny attended law school and is now a law professor at Norwalk Community College. He has written many books, including titles such as No Equal Justice, Race and Class in the American Criminal Justice System, and The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. How are you, Ryan?
Good, I'm happy to be here today, Brandon. I hope your day is going swell.
I've never been better. So let's jump right into it. How does racial prejudice affect the court and the system of law?
Well, racial prejudice can affect the court of law because of racial bias. They may sound like the same things, but there are no laws against this happening, so racism is apparent in the court and system of law. But there are ways to spread this bias. For example, the jury is selected so the people that are very racist and biased will not be included in the court case.
That makes sense. Do you think that there should be laws against racial bias?
Yes, there are many reasons why racial bias should be eliminated in our court system. If bias and prejudice is eliminated, then everyone will get a fair court case, and the sentence or release of a criminal or convicted person will be based on evidence from the case and not what the jury thinks of that person in question.
What would happen if racism did have a big role in the court system?
Well, multiple things would happen. The bias could either rub off on other jurors, or people could just ignore the racism. If it did rub off on the others, then the case would be altered and the sentence would be unfair since just one person has a bias.
So let's take this back to To Kill a Mockingbird. And can you explain to me how this racial bias affected Tom Robinson's case specifically?
Well, it changed the outcome of the case. Tom Robinson was clearly innocent in my mind. Atticus was the better lawyer, and all of the evidence piled up on the Ewells. Clearly what happened to Mr. Ewell was that he beat Mayella after he found out that she had kissed Tom Robinson. And to cover up the bruises, Mr. Ewell and Mayella agreed to say Tom Robinson did it. But even though it was clear what happened, the jury decided to convict Tom and found him guilty simply because he was African American. So if Tom was white, he would most likely wouldn't have been convicted, and he definitely wouldn't have been sentenced because he's clearly ahead in the case.
So do you think that this type of racial bias is still present in today's world? And if this case were to happen again in present day, what do you think the verdict would be?
Well, I don't think the racial bias is still present in the form it used to be, but racism is still present in the world. People are always going to be somewhat racist, even if they aren't aware that they are. So with this being said, I think if the case were to happen now, the verdict would be innocent, because the jury would be more diverse instead of being only white Southerners as before. I also believe that people would believe the evidence now. So because the evidence points to the fact that Tom is innocent, and since people wouldn't vote him guilty because of his race, the final verdict would be innocent.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
No problem.
Based on today's podcast, I think we can all conclude a lot about our 3 topic questions. Expert Jason opened our eyes on what it's like for people who don't follow society's expectations. Scout gave us a first-hand look at what it's like to experience such racial bias in Tom Robinson's trial, a man who was convicted of a crime he didn't commit purely because of the color of his skin. And Ryan explained how race has a large influence in the court of law. Based on today's podcast, I think we all can conclude a lot of... Okay. Conclude. Based on today's podcast, I think we can all conclude... Our final guest here today is Ryan Kenny. Mr. Kenny attended Harvard Law School and is now a law professor at Norwalk Community College. He has written many... Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. How are you, Ryan?
Good. How are you, Mr. Brandon?
I'm great.
No, community to college.
I'm great. Let's just hop right into it. How does racial prejudice... Next. Should we do that?
Next.
How does racial prejudice affect the court and the system of law?
Racial prejudice can affect the court of law because of racial bias. There are no laws against this happening.
Wait, can you speak into it? It's not even picking up that you're saying.
Racial prejudice can affect the court of law because of racial bias. There are no laws against this happening, so racism is apparent in the court and system of law. But there are ways to prevent this bias.
Okay, Do you think this type of racial bias is still present in today's world? And if this is the case, based on today's podcast, I think we can all.
What can you conclude?
Topic. She is here to speak with us today. Welcome to the show, Jean Louise.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you.
So, how did you feel when your father decided to defend a black person?
At first, I was
No, wait,
conflicted.
start
restart
again.
now.
Honestly, Brandon, at first I was conflicted. Experiencing
We should all treat each other with respect and kindness, even if they are different. No, okay.
Don't erase that.
I'm not a mockingbird. And can you explain to me how this racial bias affected Tom Robinson's case specifically?
Well, it changed the outcome of the case. Tom Robinson was clearly innocent in my mind. Atticus was the better lawyer, and all of the evidence piled up on the Yules. Clearly, what happened to Mr. Yule was that he.
We should treat others with respect and kindness, even if they are different, and we should end racism inside and outside of the court. Clap, Jason.